Globalization is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. Countries have built economic partnership to facilitate this movements over many countries, but the term gained popularity after the Cold War in early 1990s as these cooperative arrangements shaped modern everyday life. Globalization is a term used to describe how trade and technology have made the world into a more connected and interdependent place. Globalization also captures in its scope the economic and social change that have come about as a result, refers to integration between people, companies, and governments. Most noteworthy, this integration occurs on a global scale. Furthermore, it is the process of expanding the business all over the world. In globalization, many businesses expand globally and assume an international image. Globalization allows companies to find lower cost way to produce their products. It also increases global competition, which drives prices down and creates a larger variety of choices for consumers. Lowered costs help people in both developing and already developed countries live better on less money.
So the globalization is a process of world system becoming increasingly interlinked. So it can probably affect us in more ways than you may think. If it wasn't for globalization and the increasing number of connection between places, many of the consumer goods that we own, such as iPhone, iPhone is would be much less accessible and certainly much more expensive. So it can also affect us positively both economically and culturally. Also, globalization has increased international migration such as resulted in multicultural society. However, globalization is also affecting us in a negative way. Increased transportation and global ship populating. Manufacturing industry has resulted in environmental degradation. Populating is affecting people's health and having a negative impact on biodiversity levels globally. Also, increasing transportation connection has resulted in carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases emission are contributing to climate change will always have increased and having an impact on our daily lives.
Globalization of culture contributes to the exchange of cultural values of different countries. The convergence of tradition for cultural globalization characterizes convergence of business and customers, culture between the different countries of the world, and the growth of international communication.
How does globalization affect poor countries? The poorest countries are frequently described as being left behind by globalization. They receive little investment or private capital from abroad. They appear to be unable to withstand the ever more intense competition on export markets. But in those very same countries, it is rare that globalization is rejected.
We all know that globalization has many positive effects on us, including creating greater opportunities for us individuals and in the economy. But on the other hand, globalization has also many negative effects, especially in the environment. Globalization can influence the expression on some conflict like disturbing local events, providing new resources over which to compete, misinterpreting the current events, threatening deeply held values or symbols and pushing poverty to low-cost labor country.
Well, the positive impact of globalization is the economic growth of employment. In the particular trade openings and foreign portfolio flows have contributed to highest per capita GDP growth in the Philippines following the implementation of FX liberalization. Globalization today allows for goods made and sold all over the world. Companies to establish and compete for customers in many countries. For example, fast food chains are opening outlets every around the world. Also, companies can operate where production costs are the cheapest due to globalization. So dako kaayo og positive impact ang globalization diri sa atoa sa Pilipinas. Kay in that way sa globalization naatay communication in other nation, which is uh, other nation or sa other country, like sa mga produkto nga mahal dito sa other lugar sa gi-allow nila diri sa Pilipinas nga mas barato siya ibaligya diri sa Pilipinas. Maskin mahal dito gi barato diri sa Pilipinas, like example sa food chains all around the world man na siya nga business. So tungod sa globalization natay communication sa other nation sa sakto nga process sa business and sa exchange foreign money diri sa Pilipinas o sa lain nga lugar.
Why globalization is a big problem. Globalization. It's because of globalization make it virtually impossible for regulators on one country to foresee the worldwide implications of their actions. I thank you.
What is the most important key thing to have in globalization? Globalization is the most important in a globalized economic countries, specialized in the products and services. They have a competitive advantage in this generally means what they can produce. Ang mga elemento sa kinaiya nga naglangkob sa globalization sa ekonomiya mao ang mga cross-border nga agos sa mga butang ug serbisyo sa mga datos.
Globalizations help developed countries to their reach of the world, increase their economic growth, solving the poverty problems in their countries.
Global expansion is one of the challenges of globalization. Under the global expansion is international recruiting, managing employee immigration, incurring tariffs and export fees, payroll and compliance challenges, loss of cultural identities, foreign worker exploitation, global expansion difficulties, and the last one is immigration challenges and local job loss.
Globalization benefits everyone, but gains unevenly distributed. According to a new study, measuring the gains brought about by globalization, everybody wins, especially those in industrialized countries.
Globalization helps developing countries to deal with the rest of the world, increase their economic growth, solving the poverty problems in their country. In the past, developing countries were not able to tap on the world economy due to trade barriers. They cannot share the same economic growth that developed countries had. However, with globalization, the World Bank and the international management encourage developing countries to go through market reforms and radical changes. Through large loans, many developing nations began to take steps to open their markets by removing tariffs and free up their economies. The developed countries were able to invest in the developing nations, creating job opportunities for the poor people. For example, rapid growth in India, China has caused world poverty to decrease. It is clear to see that globalization has made the relationship between developed countries and developing nations stronger. It made each country depend on another country. According to Third World, developing countries depend on developed countries for resource flows and technology, but developed countries depend heavily on developing countries for raw materials, food, and oil, and as markets for industrial goods. One of the most important advantages of globalization are goods and the people are transported easier, faster. As a result, free trade between countries has increased and decreased the possibility of war between countries. Furthermore, the growth in the communication between the individuals and companies in the world helped to raise free trade between countries, and this led to growth economy. However, globalization has many economic and trade advantages in developing countries. We must also note that many disadvantages that globalization has created for the poor countries. One reason globalization increased the inequality between rich and poor. The benefits globalization is not universal. The richer are getting rich and the poor are becoming poorer. Many developing countries do benefit from globalization, but then again, many of such nations do lag behind. In the past 2 decades, China and India have grown faster than the already rich nation. However, countries like Africa still have the highest poverty rates. In fact, the rural areas of China, which do not tap on the global markets, also suffer greatly from such high poverty. On the other hand, developed countries set up their companies and industries to the developing nation to take advantages of low wages, and this causing pollution in countries with poor regulation of pollution. Furthermore, setting up companies and factories in the developing nations by developed countries affect badly to the economy of the developed countries and increase unemployment.
Global communication is directly affected by the process of globalization and help to increase business opportunities, remove cultural barriers, and develop a global village. Both globalization and global communication have changed the environmental, cultural, political, and economic elements of the world.